you, yeah, you would.
But I don't get to speak.
Good evening. Welcome to the organizational meeting of the Citrus County School Board. Florida Statute 1001.371 specifies that the superintendent shall act as chairman until the organization is complete. Nominations are in order for the office of chairman of the Citrus County School Board.
I'd like to nominate Linda Powers.
Did I hear an echo? Okay. Ms. Powers was nominated as chairman of the school board. Are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, I will ask for a vote. All in favor for Ms. Powers as superintendent, or excuse me. As chairman of the board. As chairman of the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Powers.
Nominations are now in order for the office of Vice Chairman of the Citrus County.
I'd like to nominate Miss Ginger Bryant.
Are there any other nominations? If not, let's make a motion to close the nominations.
Move closing.
Second.
Second.
Mrs. Bryant has been nominated. I'll now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Votes carries 5-0. Thank
Oh, we
you.
gotta set the date.
Yeah, okay.
If you'll take a motion, I'd like to go.
Yes, okay.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to make a motion that we set the time as the second Tuesday of each month at a starting time of 4 p.m., please.
Mr. Kennedy has moved that we set the, don't have a second, I'm sorry.
Second.
Mr. Kennedy has moved and Mr. Dodd has seconded that we set the date and time of the school board meeting being the second Tuesday of each month, the time at 4 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All even opposed, because I don't know.
And thank you, Madam Chairwoman, from the bottom of my heart.
You're very welcome. Hey, you all make it work, so it's fine. Next in order is hiring our school board attorney. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve Wes Bradshaw as our attorney and accept his contract.
And second?
Second.
Mr. Dunn, did you want to comment now?
Oh, well, I'll wait for discussion, sure.
Okay, it's.
Is it time for discussion?
Discussion.
You know what, I'm a new school board member, but I just have some concerns over the contract. I have concerns, not really just that the increase was made from 175 to 200 and 200 to 275, but I would like the board to be able to compare what the cost would be for a staff attorney, a full-time attorney, versus what our costs have been for a part-time attorney. Now, when I asked for some information on finance in regards to the last 2 years, this year we paid out $128,498 to Bradshaw and Mountjoy. Last year was $142,820. So we're paying a pretty large amount of money for part-time legal service. It's the service that we've asked for, and Mr. Bradshaw is very responsive to us. But I just have concern over spending that amount of money for a part-time person. And I really would like the board, I think it's time that we look at this. I mean, I've looked over the bills, and not that we need to get into a long discussion, but there are several areas that I think we need to look at this contract and put back under what's covered by the retainer. When I read our policy, I don't think the policy that we have as a board fits this contract. It says the contract will specify the duration with renewal and termination provisions. It also says when approved by the school board, special counsel may be retained to assist in any litigation. There's a clause in here that we give Mr. Bradshaw the authority to employ associate or legal counsel without our approval. And I have a problem with that. I think our policy contradicts that. Also, the National School Board Association meetings, and I spoke to Mr. Bradshaw, Wes and I talked about it, and he understands. I think that, for me, that should come out of the contract. It should be like any other travel. If we're gonna send someone to a national conference, the board should approve. Right now, the 4 conferences in the contract, as well as a state joint conference and the National School Board Conference, is 6 conferences. And I also have an issue with us paying the hourly rate for training. So when there's training at these conferences, we're paying the hourly rate. And I looked at the bills, and bills are in the office for all of us to look at, but I just have a problem with paying $200 an hour to go to training. Now, if we were to put that under the retainer, that's covered as part of our $30,000 a year retainer, then that could be more acceptable to me. But I think as a board member, I want to look at the amount of money we are paying for a part-time attorney and compare that to what it would cost for us to have a staff attorney. And I looked at one other county, actually I looked at 2 other counties, and I asked Mr. Bradshaw, we talked a little bit about some of the other counties. He talked to me about some of the other counties who have a retainer, who have attorneys that are in a similar fee agreement. But I think there could be a lot more service that we could have if we had a staff attorney. I think that there could be savings for us to have a full-time attorney. I know at $142,000, or whatever that amount was that they gave me, we could certainly have a full-time attorney available for an immediate response. And I'm not saying that Wes hasn't been there for immediate response. I mean, just like today, he was there for immediate response, and he's done very well. But if we had a staff attorney, that attorney could do a lot of help for this school district, and I think there's an opportunity, there could be some cost savings. So as a board member, looking at the tax dollar, looking at what we spend for an attorney, I would like to explore the options of a part-time attorney. And I cannot support, full-time attorney. And there's other options that we could look at as well with that, on how that could work. But unless this contract falls in line with our policy, 2.40, I have a hard time supporting a new contract for $200 and $225 an hour. I talked to one county similar to ours that has a staff attorney, and the hourly rate based on a 2,080 hour work year was $50 an hour. That was for a staff attorney. That was a full-time attorney. Now, this board has to decide the value of the legal services we've been receiving, which I think has been very good, very strong, versus what else could be for us with having someone in-house to respond immediately, to help out maybe even more with some of the other areas like collective bargaining, ESC issues, that there won't be someone who will be hesitant to pick up the phone to call to make sure that we can, get an answer and not have to worry about paying $200 or $225 an hour. And so those are my concerns. Again, it's not against Mr. Bradshaw and the quality services that he has, that he's offered to this board or this school district. But it's just something that I would like us to discuss. And I would like to discuss some other things, and maybe if we continue with the contractual agreement with Mr. Bradshaw, that we look at some of the other definitions. There's some things in here, I don't know what matters deemed to be extraordinary to the superintendent are. Again, I've already talked about I have a problem paying an hourly rate to attend legal education conferences.
Madam Chair, can I will have to respectfully disagree with much of what you're saying, Mr. Dodd. First of all, the contract, I don't agree that it violates our policy. The contract was actually a contract that's been used long before Mr. Bradshaw. It was actually done by Mr. Fitzpatrick, and it's actually the same contract that he's been using since then. So the contract is actually extremely fair to the parties, and that means the school district. One of the things we've explored in the past, and I'm not saying the board might consider doing that, although right now I don't see that there is value to exploring it, because when we explored it at the past, we had to have a much larger district with much more legal needs to be able to have an on-staff attorney. One of the challenges is that no attorney in staff can be an expert in the areas that we need. Labor issues, for example. We specifically have an attorney that handles those issues that the superintendent can be responsive to. ESE needs, those are specialized needs. I would take exception to the fact that it isn't a criticism on Mr. Bradshaw because you said hesitate to pick up the phone. I call Mr. Bradshaw a lot. Mr. Bradshaw can attest to that. Anytime I have any question on anything, I am contacting him. I have never found in one remote way that he hasn't responsive to the minutes in which I've contacted him. He may be listed in his retainer as a part-time attorney, but the bulk of his work has been the Citrus County School District. If you were to put an attorney on staff, the first thing is that is not your entire attorney staff. That's just an attorney that's here. You're also going to have to pay that attorney to have benefits. And those benefits aren't going to be that of a school teacher's benefits because they're going to be subject to the costs that you're paying them. So I believe that what you will find at the end of the day is what we have found in the past, and that it's far more expensive to have an in-house attorney. And most of our districts of this size do not have that for that example. It also allows us scalability. If we're not in lawsuits, why would we want to have lots of attorneys? And if we are in some lawsuits, we need specific attorneys that can address those needs. So we really have the best of all worlds. We have a very scalable operation where we have a contract that allows us to scale up legal services when we need them and look, as we have, to go to specific counsel that are experts in those areas. If we had an in-house counsel, we'd have to start depending on them because financially, we'd be putting that burden on ourselves. It's not something I'm willing to risk us doing, and I just can't support going down that road. As for the training, this board pays a lot for training, whether that's for a teacher, whether that's for a school board member, or that's for our attorney. We have contracted for our attorney. We want our attorney to be up to date with those issues. I believe that the billables have been quite fair and reflective. And so I can't support going forward with anything other than my motion, which is to hire Mr. Bradshaw and go with his contract.
Yes. So according to Mr. Kennedy, the $142,000, you feel strongly that for that part-time work that we cannot get a full-time staff attorney for less. Is that what you're saying? I mean,
May I address that, because I was part of that particular thing. That was the year that we had legal questions. It seemed like every hour on the hour, but you were always working on some case or some question, and we were always calling up. And I myself brought up the point, should we have Mr. Bradshaw come in full-time? It seems like he's going to be working every hour for us, and with all this is coming up. And some of the same things you mentioned, I came across. It was going to actually cost more if Mr. Bradshaw came in as a full-time employee, because he would have to have a secretary, we would have to provide an office, we would have to provide many things that we did. And Mr. Bradshaw, and to his credit, extreme credit, he, the following year, which was last year, looked at the needs that we had, the calls that we made, and he even did double time trying to respond to everything that we called. And when I called Mr. Bradshaw's office, if it's an emergency, if it's something really big, I said, I really need to speak with him as soon as possible. If it's something I can wait 2 weeks for, I just said, it's just an idea. I'd like to have a response when he gets around to it. So we sort of set the parameters, and Mr. Bradshaw went out of his way to meet those parameters, and I was very appreciative.
And board conversations, if I recall, are not billables that you have ran through. And with all due respect and kindness, you are very kind when we spend time on the phone going through lots of issues.
Well, there was one that billed you for, Ms. Powers. That was 0.3 hours. It said telephone conversation with Linda Powers regarding Board County Commission issue regarding Chuck Dixon was what the billing amount was. So, but Mr. Kennedy is right. There hasn't been billing to board members. Now, I do disagree with some people that I've seen billed for who are not administrators that have been billed for hours for a phone conversation. And if you want to know of a way that someone could, even not an administrator, could talk to an attorney, they have a staff attorney, that door could be wide open. I mean, those are things we need to look at. This is about saving tax dollars. I came into this position because I promised that I would have a fiscally sound platform for the district. And this is an issue that I want us to explore. Again, it doesn't mean that that will be the final outcome, but for this board to say, no, we don't even want to compare and look at the cost of a full-time attorney, and I do not agree that that full-time attorney would have to have a secretary. But those are things that staff could look into. Those are not things that we can discuss. Those are things that staff could look into. I don't like the fact that we are billed for Mr. Bradshaw to go talk to students about the student code of conduct. But we've asked him to do that. That's not his fault. It's something that we have asked him to do. There are other people, I believe, in administration that could go and have that talk. We were billed $1,820 for it to go to the schools for
And
student
Mr.
code of
Dodd,
conduct.
I appreciate it again, but go ahead.
Just so that the board knows, when I have to hire outside counsel for certain situations, for such as a student expulsion, when I step down and represent the superintendent, and we have someone come and sit as the board attorney, or in a teacher termination, generally they send the bill to me. I pay that bill out of my operating account and then add it to the school board bill, which stops the process of them having to open up vendor IDs for every single thing. That's the way it's always been done. So I don't know how much of that is in there or not. As far as the code of conduct is concerned, the board has always asked me to go to all of the schools. However, last year I went to the TRC and made one video that was distributed to all of the schools. So going to all of the schools was the direction of the board and the way the board wanted me to do it. If you don't want me to do that, that's fine. I mean, because I take the direction and I serve at y'all's pleasure. Outside of that, y'all can make your mind up.
Well, and Mr. Dodd, something that concerns me is I appreciate that you ran on fiscal responsibility. I think we all try to be very fiscal responsible on this board. I would say that in fact, there's some times that we wouldn't agree with some of the spending options of all board members. And I think that it concerns me that we're trying to imply that this board has been fiscally irresponsible by the hiring of our attorney. So I would take exception with that.
Well, don't take exception. That's not
Well,
what was meant.
sir, that's what you said. You said that you disagree in the billings, and something that this board has had a long-standing issue of asking our attorney to go to the schools and do that work of making sure that our students were aware of the code of conduct so that when we do have expulsion hearings, we do that. Now, if you want to have a conversation on that, that's something for, I believe, a separate time, and this board could take that issue up. But that's something that we have asked him to do. So to imply that that's somehow padding the billables is concerning to me.
Mr. Kenny, I don't think that Mr. John is replying, but I think he's saying that he'd like to take a close look at what we're asking, and maybe we could ask other people to do that rather than have Mr. Bradshaw, which we're typically ask Mr. Bradshaw to do it because he's an attorney, he can answer questions, but we could ask other people to do some things and therefore maybe reduce the amount. But I do know the time that I was talking about when we had so many legal issues that we asked Mr. Bradshaw to do more than what we normally would ask, you would think, but we had all those issues we had to discuss, had to have information on. So I think your point's well taken, that we should look at things that other people could do, and maybe Mr. Bradshaw doesn't have to do that, we could save some money that way. But I think that what he has done and what we have asked him to do, he's done well, and he's done because we've asked him. He hasn't volunteered or decided that that's what he was gonna do this week, it's because we asked him to do it.
Well, I would like to see what the other counties are doing. I mean, I did pull up online Sumter County. I mean, that was $150 for litigation, $90 for all other hourly contact. Now, that's what I pulled up online.
And I think it'd be a good idea, because
And that's,
2 years ago, I went to the other counties too, because I wanted to find out what are the
Yes.
attorneys in the other counties. And I asked, and I kept, through all of it, when I compared everything, I agree with Mr. Kennedy. We're doing okay, we were in a good spot. Mr. Bradshaw is serving us well. But I asked the questions of Brooksville and another county that I talked about, so.
well, again, I'm not saying that Mr. Bradshaw's not doing things very well. I'm saying that the cost that we pay for a part-time attorney could be more than what we could pay for a full-time attorney. And that's what I want the board to explore, and that would be the direction of staff, and that would be the opportunity for us to see if we're at the position now in Citrus County, like a lot of other counties have gone that route, in order to have a staff attorney, and where the benefits could come for a full-time attorney that could help in maybe even some of the other areas, whether it's risk management,
Like lobbyists.
collective bargaining, lobbyists. There's a lot of areas that we could,
And maybe that's something that you would like to take on, and as some of us have already done it before and gotten answers, you could take on and explore that, and then talk about a different contract or a different approach. Right now, though, I think we have a motion on the table to vote on hiring Mr. Bradshaw. Yea or nay?
And there's no one else I'd like to call the question.
Okay. Well, repeat to me, Linda, who made the motion, who made the second?
Thomas Kennedy made the motion, and it was seconded by Mrs. Bryant.
Okay, to hire Mr. Bradshaw.
at the increased rate, or at
And
the
right now, I've called the question.
Right.
current contract, or the
I said at the current
The
contract.
current contract. So,
The contract that's as presented.
as presented. So, call, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
nay.
So now we have to, that was for calling the question.
Oh, sorry.
Now we have to vote on
Okay,
the other.
thank you.
That's okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Oh, this is, now
Hiring
we're
Mr.
voting for
Bradshaw.
hiring Wes or not.
Okay, so to
That was the other.
I called the
So
question.
you called the question. and we-
The voting was to call, just to call the question.
Now it's for
And
hiring.
there's some gray area because of the dialogue that's taking place.
But now the question's been called. There's no more discussion at this point. I called the question and it
We
was,
did get a little.
approved. So now you have to move to the
Now we're
motion.
voting on the motion.
There's no more conversation.
So now we'll call, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay, okay. Passes 4-1.
So we're,
So Mr. Bradshaw has been.
If-
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
been that indication.
If he wants to do research, that's great.
The contract doesn't have a duration on it, so we could
Right,
change
and
anytime.
right.
So,
And we
I
have
mean,
done it,
I can
we
certainly
have
do
done
that.
it before, and you probably could get some more information that we did not, but I know I spent 3-4 months.
And I'm not interested in having staff spend more money to find
Oh, no,
out
not the staff.
that we are gonna be right at the back, same place that we've already been, and that's that we don't need to expand our current staff when we have other needs in the school right now.
Not even if we save money.
Okay, it's, discussion is over, it's time for adjournment.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned.
You gotta open up the annual, the.
we
Oh, sorry, yes. no,
Citrus County
forgot
School
about
Board
that.
Leasing Corporation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay. We have, Mr. Bradshaw, how do you want me to, phrase this?
That's fine, I mean, generally, this is the minutes of the annual meeting of the Citrus, of the Board of Directors of the Citrus County School Board Leasing Corporation. You know, we formed a leasing corporation for all the bonding issues. It needs to be dates held, we generally hold it on the same days we do the organizational meeting, so that we don't forget to do it every single year. As far as the minutes are concerned, what we really need to do is declare that a quorum is present, because all of the directors are here, each board member is a director, so present is Mr. Kennedy, Ms. Bryant, Ms. Powers, Ms. Balfour, and Mr. Dodd. There were none, none absent, thank you. Generally, Ms. Powers is the chairperson of the school board, is the chairperson as far as the leasing corporation is concerned. We need to elect the president and vice president. Generally, they do that as far as the chairman of the school board and the vice chairman of the school board are usually the president and the vice president. Our treasurer was Mr. Blocker, who was the director of finance and all things considered money, but that is now probably Ms. Wilson, and then the secretary generally was him. So if
So we need a motion, today, me as president.
I move that we make Linda Powers as president and Ginger Bryant as vice president.
Second.
Oh, and Tammy Wilson as treasurer and Sam Himmel as secretary. Sorry, Ms. Himmel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
And that would be it. I just need everyone to sign that you're waiving any formal notice requirements, which we have noticed everyone. And no further business, you can adjourn the meeting.
Blue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the meeting is adjourned.
That's okay, Stacy.
She did.